we found that voice compelling. At some level, we said, a lot of voices, I hear a lot of voices, but that's the one I'm going to follow. And that's the Christian life. Now, the claim of the New Testament is that everybody is meant to follow that voice. Jesus is not just, one interesting figure among many. Like, oh, that's nice. He's got, a few million followers, but lots of other spiritual gurus have their followers. And, there's this shepherd and that shepherd. No. I am the good shepherd, Jesus says. I am the good shepherd. And the will of God is that everyone hears his voice. Everyone follows him.
11 days in Africa, 4 countries, 18,000 kilometers. The question that nobody quite answered and that everyone kept asking was this: why these 4 countries? Africa has 54 nations. Nigeria has the largest Catholic population on the continent. Kenya, South Africa, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, all of them home to millions of faithful, all of them with deep ties to the Church. And yet, Leo XIV chose Algeria, Cameroon, Angola, and Equatorial Guinea. On the 9th of April 2026, 4 days before departure, Vatican spokesperson Matteo Bruni gave the press a briefing. He confirmed that the Pope would speak across the 4 countries in 4 languages: English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And then he used a phrase that deserves to be taken seriously. He called this trip a laboratory of peace, not a tour, not a pastoral visit, not a diplomatic mission, a laboratory, a place where something is tested, where something is being figured out, where the future is being worked on. So what exactly was Leo XIV trying to figure out? What was he testing? And why these 4 countries? 4 different relationships with religion. A Muslim majority state, where the Church has almost no visibility. A bilingual Christian nation torn by internal conflict. A majority Catholic former Portuguese colony marked by slavery and civil war. A Spanish-speaking majority Catholic state under authoritarian rule. 4 different wounds: the forgotten Church, the forgotten war, the forgotten poor, the forgotten prisoner. And one consistent message, repeated in every capital, every stadium, every cathedral, every orphanage, every diamond mine. The resources of this continent belong to its people. Those who extract them for profit, those who invest the proceeds in weapons, those who govern for their own enrichment. They are answerable before God and before history. The Church is not here to be powerful. It is here to be present, unarmed and disarming. Good is stronger than evil, even when, for a moment, it seems to be losing. And peace, the real peace that goes beyond the absence of war, is built in the heart, one act of justice at a time. This is the laboratory. This is what was being tested. And then he prayed, briefly, silently, personally. After a brief prayer, the Pope departed, the Vatican press office reported. This was perhaps the most intimate moment of the entire trip. A man visiting the home of his spiritual father. An Augustinian Pope, standing in the dust of Augustine's city, alone with a history that has shaped his entire life. No speech could have communicated more than that silence.
Who has direct authority over the priest? In the Catholic Church, we are not big on rogue priests. Someone has to be giving orders. While every priest, and really all the faithful for that matter, must obey the authority of the bishop in the diocese where they live, diocesan priests have a special relationship with the local bishop, as he is the one who acts as their direct superior. When one becomes a diocesan priest, they make a promise of obedience to a bishop to serve the needs of that bishop in his diocese. This means that the bishop has a responsibility to assign the priest work, and the priest must accept whatever obedience he's given. Since the bishop only has authority over his diocese, and the majority of institutions run by the diocese are parishes, this means that diocesan priests spend most of their lives working at parishes within the diocesan boundaries. While special assignments such as teaching in a seminary or becoming a missionary are possible, these are rare. Religious priests are quite different. Rather than joining a diocese and serving at the will of a bishop, we join religious orders, serving at the will of the brotherhood and its elected minister called a provincial or abbot. In addition to the promises that all priests make to be obedient to the local bishop, to pray the office, and imitate Jesus, among other things, religious priests additionally make 3 vows to their superior, committing their life to poverty, chastity, and obedience in the way of their founder. This has tremendous implications for every aspect of our lives. For one, it means that religious priests are committed to a way of life, not necessarily a diocese. The provincial, who has no diocese of his own, makes relationships with bishops around a region or world and requests that his priest be assigned within a diocese. Meaning that our relationship with the local bishop is quite different than secular priests. While we must show him respect, of course, and he can refuse to welcome a religious priest into his diocese, he doesn't actually have the authority to determine where or how we live. It's the provincial, not the bishop, who is responsible for the spiritual welfare, assignment, discipline, and retirement of his priests. The bishop simply allows them to work and reside in agreed-upon ways. Maybe most significantly, this means that most religious priests do not remain in the same diocese all their life, but are assigned to any number of places around the world and are far more likely to be assigned to a mission outside of a parish than diocesan priests. While it's not uncommon for religious priests to help or even pastor churches, the work of the provincial is not to maintain the diocesan structures, but to progress the charism of the order. Schools, universities, hospitals, retreat centers, and institutions of direct service to the poor are just as likely assignments for a religious priest as a parish is. And if all of that sounds complicated, just think of it in business terms. Diocesan priests are permanent employees of a diocese, while religious priests are independent contractors. Of course, the difference between the two is far more than legal distinctions of authority and assignment. There are also major differences in approach and spirituality. Looking again at the question of authority, there is a huge difference in the way diocesan and religious priests view obedience given the relationship they have with their superiors. Diocesan priests serve a bishop, a man with the full authority of a diocese, whom they did not elect, may not even come from their own diocese, and will live the rest of his life in that position. Religious priests, on the other hand, serve a provincial, a man who may or may not even be ordained, is elected from among the brothers, and after a designated time in office, will return to the rank of everyone else. Trust me when I say that in general, provincials exercise their authority with much more collaboration and reservation than bishops do. When you know that your power is limited and relies on the happiness of the brothers, things are going to go a little different. Another distinction we might make between religious and diocesan priests is the way that we approach mission and work from a spiritual level. Diocesan priests, given their commitment to a diocese and near unanimous assignment to parishes, tend to emphasize the priestly aspect of Jesus' threefold ministry. They are the ones dedicated to the sacrifice, to the sacraments, to the day in and day out life of the church. In other words, they're the pastors, the ones you can rely on to always be there today, tomorrow, and 20 years from now. They put down roots and form long relationships, serving as the bedrock for the community of faith. This is not so for religious priests that come and go, who switch assignments and even careers. What guides us is not the sacramental life per se, but the charism and mission of our founder. In this way, religious priests tend to emphasize the prophetic aspect of Jesus' threefold ministry. What we lack in commitment to one place, we make up for in zeal and inspiration. Our hope is to light a fire, to offer a new perspective, to share the fruit of our religious life, and then to move on to the next place. Rather than being the pastor, we're the preacher. Sometimes with our lips, but always with our lives. This might mean exercising our priesthood through the Mass and sacraments, but it also might be lived out through teaching, caring for the poor, healing the sick, or building the kingdom of God. When we look at it this way, we might ask a question. Which one is better? Which do we need more of? In the end, it seems like a silly question. Surely a world with only pastors would become stagnant and familiar. Every once in a while, we need some new energy, new perspectives, a shot of life to energize us and to send us out. On the other hand, what a chaotic mess we'd be with only prophets and no one to administer the church. Someone needs to turn the lights on, plan for the future, and lay a foundation that will last. Which speaks, I think, to the beautiful diversity that our church offers. There may only be one God and one Lord, but there are so many different ways to imitate him, so many different facets of our faith worth emphasizing. Some people may be called to the stability of diocesan life, one that lends itself more towards institutions, regular sacramental life, and individual work, while others might be more inclined to the itinerancy of religious life, one that lends itself to creativity, adaptation, and communal living. It's all one priesthood, but there are different lives to be lived for sure. The church most certainly needs both.
My call to the priesthood came in a perhaps somewhat unusual way. I came from a very strong Catholic family, went to Mass every Sunday, but I didn't really want to be a priest when I was a young man. I wanted to be a baseball player, and I wanted to be a lawyer and then a politician. That was pretty much the path I was on. But then one spring day in 1974, I was a freshman at Fenwick High School, which is a Dominican high school outside Chicago. And the young professor, he was a Dominican priest, presented to us one of Thomas Aquinas' arguments for God's existence. No one else in the class, I don't think, was very impressed by it, but for some reason, that was like a bell going off in my mind. It gave me a sense of the reality of God, which I've never lost. I was utterly fascinated by the fact that we could think our way to God. And that led me on a path to the library to read more of Thomas Aquinas. I remember my father telling me, well, couldn't you start with something a little easier? So I was 14 at the time, but I began reading this philosophy and theology. That led me then further into the experience of God, into a personal relationship with God. If God is real, God exists, and God is the highest good, shouldn't I give my whole life to him? So that's the way my mind and my heart began to drift, and it led me to the priesthood. And really, I've never gotten off that path because most of my life as a priest has been as a professor, as a teacher, a writer, a scholar. So I really think God reached out to me through Thomas Aquinas. People ask sometimes about what advice I would give to a young person who's discerning a vocation. I would say this: stick with the theodrama and not the ego drama. The ego drama is what I want, my projects, my plans. The theodrama is what God wants, God's projects and plans, and they are always more fascinating than anything we could come up with. So be open to the theodrama, be open to a sense of surprise. That's the advice I would give.
So when I was in high school, all I wanted was to be happy. I went to Mass with my mom growing up, but I wasn't into my faith at all. It just didn't make sense to me. I thought my life made sense without God. I had an incredible girlfriend who I thought I was in love with, had a best friend who I could talk to about anything. But over the course of one summer, she broke up with me, and my best friend moved away. And I remember feeling empty and alone, and I was embarrassed. And so I started to try to fill that emptiness, like with partying more, with hanging out more, with dating more girls. I gave into a lot more sins, thinking that they would satisfy me, but nothing worked. I realized I was just empty inside. Nothing satisfied that ache in my heart.
During my college years, I wanted reasons for my faith, and so I went to school just to learn more about my faith. But when I got there, it seemed like the answers that I received were things that just made me question even more. Like there was no reason for what we really believed. And so I ended up having this hatred in my heart. You know, I was still Catholic, but I really hated the church. I even became a missionary after college, a full-time missionary in Central America. The mission I went to was super Catholic, and I got down there and I just was so angry at the church. That I would go to Mass and I would openly make fun of the priest during his homily, during the entire Mass. But I had no idea how arrogant I was and how drastically my life was about to change.
started to see how unhappy I'd become. And so she invited me to go on a retreat with her. But I didn't want to go. I did not want to go on this retreat because I wanted nothing to do with the church. I didn't think that the church could tell me anything. I didn't think that the church had anything to offer me. But I went, and I remember telling God, you better make something happen on this retreat, or else I'll leave the church forever. But on the second night of the retreat, I felt like I heard God speak to me. I heard him say, I love you. And it pierced my heart because I always thought growing up that I had to do something to earn someone's love. But here God was looking at me and my brokenness and my mess with all the junk I had done over the past few years, all the sin I'd committed, and he told me, I love you. I asked him, what is your will for me?
At that mission, I got really sick. So sick that they thought I was going to die. So someone called the priest, and as I was lying there in that bed, in walked the man that I had made fun of for weeks now at every single Mass. And without hesitating, he rushed to my bedside and he gave me the anointing of the sick, and he gave me Holy Communion. And I remember lying there thinking, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this man really does know who Jesus is. Maybe this is all true. That began this process of asking questions in a really deep way and finding the answers for the first time. And as I found those answers, something in my heart and in my mind changed. And I realized that I was not only falling in love with God, I was falling in love with his church that he gave us. Last number of years, I had thought that I was so right and that the church was so wrong. But the priest had answers to questions that I had never heard. And for the first time in my life, I experienced the joy of being wrong. I remember being in front of the Eucharist one day, praying. And I was getting ready to get married to an amazing woman. But in my prayer, I said, God, I will do whatever you want me to do. And in my prayer, I realized God was saying, I will love you no matter what you choose, but I am calling you to a different path. Started going back to church more, and the more I spent time praying with Jesus in adoration, the more it made sense to me what he was calling me to do.
Leadership has nothing to do with rank. I knew many people who sit at the highest levels of an organization who are not leaders. We do as they tell us because they have authority over us, but we do not trust them and we do not follow them. I also know people at low levels of organizations that have no formal authority, but they've made a choice. The choice to look after the person to the left of them, the choice to look after the person to the right of them, and we would trust them and follow them anywhere. Leadership is the awesome responsibility to see those around us rise. You, every one of us, can choose to be the leader we wish we had. We lead our teams and we can lead our clients when we decide that we will do everything in our power to see them rise, to see them achieve their ambitions and their dreams. And this is what servant leadership means. I serve your dream. and the most ignored characteristic of leadership. You know, we talk about vision and charisma. Yes, these are important. But I've known some wonderful leaders who don't have huge world-changing vision. I've known some wonderful leaders that are quiet and sit in the corner, but they all have courage. The courage to advance a vision, the courage to take risks on people, the courage to believe in people, the courage to speak truth to power, the courage to do the right thing and have integrity. I think courage is a very undervalued characteristic of leadership.